Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Growth Support Conversation. My name is Neil, and today I'm joined by Sara Feldman, the Director of Member Engagement at the Consortium for Service Innovation. Sara, this is your second time we're actually having a conversation. Last time we did a Kickstarter at KCS, which I think was great for one of those topics for people to really get, a low entry point into really kickstarting it and making sure that they're set up for success. We're back to talk about content, and I'm curious if you want to introduce yourself for people first, and then we'll dive into our topic today.
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. I'm so glad to be back. Big fan of what you're doing with this podcast and the sort of the community that you assemble around it. So well done. I like to still start with the fact that my career began with a foundation in technical writing because, as we've chatted about before, I think that I bring that foundation with me no matter what. I was a technical writer for many years and then sort of transitioned more into knowledge management. I've always been either embedded or connected to support teams, and I'm actually really grateful for that experience. A lot of times tech writers start in different departments, product engineering, you've heard of marketing, but my point of view for businessing is grounded in customer support, post-sale customer experience, but of course, lots of collaboration and liaising with cross-functional teams. So I feel like I've got a pretty good sort of wide perspective of those cross-functional connections. As my career evolved into knowledge management, eventually I found quite specifically KCS, Knowledge Centered Service, like you talked about, which is a knowledge management methodology that operationalizes knowledge management for customer-facing service and support teams. That's what we talked a lot about last time. The organization that sort of shepherds that methodology is the Consortium for Service Innovation. We like to remind folks that it is a nonprofit think tank for the industry. And so KCS methodology is owned and iterated by members of the consortium. And because of the nonprofit status, that gets to be shared with the world via Creative Commons license. So many folks like you and thousands of others around the world follow and practice KCS with the open source documentation. And we think that's fabulous. And then whenever we do like to let people know that if you're really passionate about it and interested in sort of being part of the constant evolution of it, pursuing or reaching out to me if you're curious about being a member of the consortium, we're always happy to have that conversation. And that's a little bit of my background, one sliver of it at least.
I love it, and thank you for the introduction, and really appreciate it. And today we're going to be talking about more content. We're going to be talking about creating impactful customer experiences with actually, your content where maybe you can't do it with your product, but you can really make sure that you create an experience that really supports and scaffolds the product experience. You brought the topic. I'm really curious if you want to premise it and you want to give some context to the conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always thinking about content. I'm a content fanatic of all stages of the customer journey. I think it's just such a powerful mechanism, even before AI got in the mix, although that, that's a whole separate conversation we could talk about. But what content can do, what knowledge-fueled content can do for the customer experience at any stage of the customer journey, I think is so special. I mean, of course, products and services are the foundations of many businesses existing, but content, especially when it's knowledge fueled and relevant to the customer job to be done, we've talked about before, it can do so much with just a few words. And I think that's really inspiring. And so I just try and observe really creative and impactful content examples out there in the world, always looking for inspiration in unexpected places in that way. And so actually what I didn't tell you yet, Neil, is that I have a presentation that I'm finalizing on this topic, which is why it's sort of spinning around in my brain. But what I didn't tell you is that I kind of sometimes give myself a premise and then figure out how I can sort of find examples that fill that premise, because that's just a way to sort of get me to start, thinking more creatively. So the premise I gave myself was, looking at marketing teams, I talked about cross-functional collaboration before, and
Yep.
I've been lucky to collaborate with great marketing folks throughout my career. I always sometimes find myself embracing the idea of being a marketing groupie, even though I've mostly been in the post-sale side, because they have the budgets and they have the graphic designers and they have the almost more pressure to make content be very action oriented, because that's what it's literally has to do that in order to bring customers in. So big fan of marketing approaches in general. And I started thinking about, well, what are some techniques that marketers do that we meaning, generalizing post-sale folks, maybe we bristle at, like, oh, that's just for sales and leads and telling customers what they want to hear. We post-sale folks really understand the customer experience, right? Like, what if we just set that limiting belief aside and looked for inspiration from marketers for post-sale experience? And so I was looking at things like remarketing, which is an advertising technique. If you like look at a shoe online and then one time and then anywhere you go on the internet, do you like see that shoe pop up again? If you've experienced that, that's remarketing. Thinking about segmentation, how sales and marketing folks really, we talk about personalized content and post-sale. Marketers and sales teams have been doing this, from day one in terms of segmentation and delivering hyper-personal, pre-sales oriented content to segmented folks, right? Making sure that it's relevant to their job role or their region or the specific feature or service that they think could be interesting to the prospective customer. And then also nurture campaigns. The idea of the drip campaigns is another way it's called, that over time you're really cultivating a relationship even with a prospect, and that's very much content driven. So I was looking at these three sales and marketing tactics and curious about, well, what inspiration could we take from a post-sales perspective to try and create better content for post-sale customer experience, being inspired by what our pre-sales colleagues have done. So that's my premise. Any questions? What do you think so far?
Any questions? I have
You're
many examples. I have many questions. No, I can really relate, because as soon as you started going through all of those examples of these things that they do, immediately in my head, I'm like, well, these are also things that I do as a post experience thing. So I'm happy to give your premise some examples and some maybe flush it out a little bit with some of those things that we do to create those. Like you're talking about retargeting and remarketing, right? And when you talk about a customer experience in that sense, a lot of the things that we do from a CX perspective is to help our members and customers better engage with our product. And that can also come from maybe educating them on new products and services, maybe continuing the conversation around products or services that they've used. Hey, you started to use this thing, you can continue to use it. We, for example, have a resource library as part of our product. So I'm an e-learning organization. We help HR professionals develop in their career and develop skills for their future. And we do that in many ways. We have courses, we have events, we have resources and like downloadable templates, guides, things like that, and many other things across the board. And with resources specifically, what we've actually done, a lot of it comes around activation and usage. How can we get people to, one, activate it in the first place, and two, come back and continue to use it in a higher frequency, right? And so when somebody downloads resources, we will use that marketing way of working in that sense. They've downloaded a resource. Hey, you might find this one interesting too. Where they see that information is dependent on some of the things that they're interacting. So for example, we also retarget existing customers on those other platforms through advertisements as well. But instead of selling, it is, hey, you think you might find this resource helpful based on your, previous downloads and the things that you're looking for. So those are some ways that we also kind of push content using some of these tactics. At the same time, what you also mentioned around nurture sequences, the first project I worked on at this company when I joined, when we were 8, was building the customer life cycle. And that includes onboarding life cycles, driving activation through continuous usage and throughout, as well as, the renewal life cycle when it starts to end. These campaigns and member marketing and customer communication is entirely positioned in that post-sale experience. So some concrete examples, what you're asking. We're flipping the tables here. So what do you got? What are your questions?
I really questions. And I do have some more specific examples that I've found from poking around, but I love that. I mean, yeah, you, Neil, unsurprisingly, you live and breathe this already. I think that many post-sale, content service support leaders are doing this a little bit more organically and maybe don't really think about it in these terms of course, we're remarketing to our customers, of course. And you said that you actually, do you have budget that you spend money to go retarget current customers on other platforms based on resources? Is that what I heard you
We're
say?
marketing groupies, Sarah. We're marketing groupies.
Yeah,
Listen, I'm not a marketeer, but our member communications and member marketing lives in marketing, so they do have it, and that's how we support each other. And we actually build a lot of those campaigns in collaboration. For example, we also have a community of 17,000 HR professionals, and there we really want to drive continuous conversations within the community. So when it comes to content, we help support our marketing team actually build the community digests with the core content that we want to engage our members with and help them actually build that out. So it is a really collaborative effort to really, everybody's working towards the same goal in that sense. So then it comes down to actually being able to, say, hey, this is what our community is talking about. Be the voice of your customer. And say, this is what people are engaging with and what they're seeing in the post-sale experience. Here's how you can build that out.
Yeah, I love that. And as I was, digging more recently, refreshing myself about these concepts when it came to for nurture campaigns, for example. And I think all of these that I sort of gave 3 approach examples, but I think they really intertwine in terms of strategy. Is that nurture campaigns on the pre-sale side, of course, are nurturing towards a purchase, right? You try and just do some brand awareness. There's lots of models out there of slowly trying to increase your customers' affinity with your brand until they finally start giving you money, hopefully in a good exchange of value. But that from the post-sale side, thinking about instead of nurturing towards a purchase, you're nurturing towards additional feature adoption. You talked about that. Use case expansion. So maybe a customer is already using your product for one use case, but how can you expand their point of view about what your product can help them achieve in their world that maybe it hasn't even occurred to the customer? Skills growth, advocacy, or referral. These are things that I think post-sale folks think about a lot, but to really consider how they could more systematically set up content nurture campaigns to support these. And I love hearing that you're partnering with marketing on this so deliberately and so collaboratively. That's great to hear. I have kind of a superficial example here, but I was recently poking around for content examples for this, and sometimes I just I think I don't even know where these ideas came from, but I remember that when I was a kid, for special occasions, we would shop at Nordstrom, which is a little bit of a higher end department store over here in the US. And at some point learning that if you buy clothes through Nordstrom, jeans specifically, I'm 5'4", which is on the shorter end, they'll hem the jeans for you for free at Nordstrom. And so I was just curious. It's been a long time. I popped onto the Nordstrom website to look up, is this, do they still do this? Has this gone the way of, recession pinching? And in fact, the opposite, their webpage about their sort of alteration services in terms of what's included if you shop there or not. It's not just a page that says we do alterations. I know this is a superficial example, but they go somewhere that I think is really interesting. So not only do they have a website that talks about, yes, this service exists and this is how you ask us to do it. They have a robust page that shows 10 different reasons why you might want to consider alterations. And my favorite one any other female listeners or watchers out there will relate to this. Adding pockets. Again, I know I'm saying very, very superficial examples here, but this is the thing that women often bond over, about how we wish our clothes had more pockets. And we're always excited when an unexpected clothing item has pockets. We're like, yes, they're thinking of me. And just the fact that on this alterations page where you think of, okay, I'm shortening or lengthening something, I'm taking something in or out to make it fit. This is that use case expansion that I'm talking about, right? You could also come to Nordstrom to add, this is a thing I never would have thought of on my own. And it's not something so out of this world. Of course, the needle and thread, that's something you can do with a needle and thread. But the fact that they're setting that idea up for you, and there were a couple other things in there in terms of like changing the style or various life milestones that you might want to consider them. And I just thought it was such a good example of that content of the use case expansion. Like, let me present to you, customer, let me do the thinking for you about how else we can be of value and service to you.
No, I love that example, because you're also not considering just the need of today in that sense, but also planting the seed for, recurring, coming back, actually being able to say, yeah, actually, hey, that's super cool. Exactly what you mentioned, right? Actually putting the customer first instead of, hey, it's just a service, here you go, but really like, hey, these are probably things that you want pockets, right? You want
right.
that.
Really in their point of view, right? I've been thinking about customer journey maps, which are super useful and important. Of course, you want to have all your ducks in a row with your touch points that you control. Super, super important. But your customers, from their point of view, are rarely, I would say, of course there's variation, but like they're not interacting with all those touch points. They're interacting in their world, like where you're sitting at your desk. If you look around, right, you're not following a customer journey map just with your laptop or just with the software. Your lights and your clothes and your headphones and your peripheral devices, right? Your point of view, your worldview, your potential use cases, your jobs to be done go so far beyond the customer journey of one specific product or service you're using. And so from a content influencer, and I mean that from like you work for a company and you can influence content in any way, not the social media version. You just have so much opportunity to really think about what your customer's going through and what you might be in a position to help them with that goes so far beyond your product and service. Another really silly one, but I think this is a good one, is if you go to I don't know if this is true, it's sort of like the larger like Home Depot's home improvement stores, but if you go to the smaller paint stores, our house has got lots of room for improvement, so I often find myself at the local paint store. And there's a bulletin board there that anyone can put a business card for painting services, obviously, or handyman services. And the paint store doesn't get any specific benefit directly of having those cards there, but just very obviously that's going to be relevant to their customers, right? I don't just need to buy paint, I need to fix my house. And if this paint store is enabling me to better find complementary products and services, if you transpose that into the digital space, the possibilities are endless in terms of what you could enable a warm intro to your customers for things that would be relevant to them.
Yeah, and one of the things that's, an example from my side, in that sense, we have specifically talking about content where you can actually influence some of these things, and one that can be in a help center or knowledge management side, but at the same time, it can also be around certain things of, as an e-learning company, we have our content, which we teach and train on. We have our knowledge base in the help center, which is content that we use to support that product experience itself. But we have that information. We have information about HR. We have information about our product. That's great. Yeah. But as an e-learning organization, a lot of people are there to learn. And a lot of people have barriers around is actually how to go best about learning and actually getting that and this side of things. So actually having other educational content that goes beyond just you're here for HR, you're here for this particular
Right.
product, but you're here to learn. Like, how can you better learn? That's something that's going to continue past just your experience of today, or you can take it into the other things there. So that's one of the ways that we try and influence content as well, where you have this like best practices for learning itself
Mhm.
that can be transferable anywhere in that sense. So that's also another use case that I think resonates in terms of, it's a customer experience that goes beyond just your own product.
I love that. You just got me thinking, maybe you already do this, but things that support learning are, is there anything to know about like my environment that would help me? Lighting, music, hydration, right? Like what are the tips that you could sort of, the friendly reminders that you could give your learners about, this type of music helps this type of brain, like whatever it might be, that's more 360 from the customer point of view, that's like really expanding the scope of, sure, you have your company and your product mission, but beyond that, if your mission is to enhance your customer success while fulfilling their job to be done, what are the complementary sort of intersections of things that are relevant? So that could be fun to play with, right? And that reminds me of some other examples that I've been finding is the number of brands that have gotten creative with Spotify, like music as an example of ways to sort of really enhance your understanding of your customer as a real human moving through the world. There's more and more brands that are sort of exploring Spotify. A favorite one that gets cited often is Barilla, the pasta company. You can find playlists on Spotify that will last as long as the recommended amount of time to boil the pasta. So if you're gonna, you got your music on in the kitchen while you're cooking dinner, and if to sort of ask for, give me the Barilla Penne playlist, right? Like how cool is that? Or stores who have an H&M is known to do this, right? The music in the in-store experience is very curated to vibe with their brand identity, and then you can go listen to H&M music on your own, not at the store. My protein powder just started sending me Spotify playlist recommendations. Yeah.
Listen, we came here to talk about business insights and driving impactful customer experience with content, and now we're leaving with pockets and Spotify playlists and new music. So this is absolutely fantastic. It's wonderful.
And that's what I'm talking about in terms of just like really looking beyond our internal view of how things are happening, and maybe we take one step out. You do customer interviews and you start to understand them, but what if you really truly embrace this sort of like 360 customer ecosystem view? And props to the folks out there who started these ideas. I don't know who started the Barilla Spotify or my protein powder person who decided that they would curate music that would go with my lifestyle because I'm a protein powder customer. I'm just inspired, and it's just fun to sort of like spot these things in the wild. Trader Joe's is a grocery store, a very beloved grocery store chain here in the US that's a little bit smaller, quite different from your typical big grocery store chains. And they have a thing called the Trader Joe's Flyer. I think it has a more fun name than that, but it's a little newsletter that you can get in the mail or in the store. And it's the stories behind the products. Of course, it's recipes, it's ways to use and enjoy these things in your life. It gives a lot more depth and color and narrative to things that beyond just, oh, here's what's on sale and here's maybe one way you could use it, right? It's really embracing the shopper as a person with story and interests. And are you hosting? Do you have kids? Let me really put this food in the perspective of your life. And by the way, it's like a fun, it's a fun read. I'm also giving you some entertainment along with something that's more utilitarian. So these are just fun examples that I like to look at that are really geared towards post-sale experience, but embrace some of those pre-sales tactics, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the conversations that I also had recently is about being able to focus on changing what the term is of better sameness, and where a lot of people fall into the mold of just iterating on the same things and just continuing to be able to kind of bring in the, hey, we're doing it better, but it's still the same ongoing, ultimately kind of non-changing thing. And I think thinking about things in this perspective of, hey, how can you bring a lot of that, pre-sale kind of marketing and driving of conversion experience and really bring that into something that is a lot more engaging in the post-sale experience and be able to bring that through? And how do you actually support that with not only your actual functional and operational knowledge and content to help educate customers better, but also actually bring it one step further and really think outside of the box when it comes to just the classic mechanics that people will drive.
Yeah. And if you happen to, you don't, if anyone listening happens to work at a company where maybe you feel like you don't get the resources you wish you could, things feel like you would allocate things differently. Let's just say that if you had the opportunity to do that. I think you often hear that, or folks get frustrated with colleagues in different departments because decisions get made without considering ripple effects. It's we've chatted about this before. It's easy to get frustrated at work, to get hung up on the challenges or the limitations. And my sort of like CTA to leave folks with is, the next time you find yourself encountering something like that, how can you sort of pause and almost force yourself to set that aside? Okay, is this a limiting belief? Am I sort of making some assumptions here about how this is? Instead of getting stuck in the frustration, how can you turn it into an opportunity? If you have folks who are doing things, putting things into motion, using resources that influence your customer experience pre or post sales, and you're not getting the results you want or the opportunities you want, well, then that's a perfect opportunity to invite new collaboration, new ideas. What is that marketing team doing? How are they spending money? How can you actually turn that into a win-win, where there's something that they already have in motion and it just needs a little bit of tweaks to be relevant to some post-sale customer interactions that you're excited about? What can you actually bring to them that can help them be more effective? Because of course we're biased here, but we think that support folks maybe have the best customer insights because we're the ones that are talking to them day in, day out. So what can you bring to those other teams? Look at sales, look at marketing. How can you really partner and turn something that feels like a limitation into an opportunity by collaborating and getting creative and really trying something completely brand new rather than just iterating on what you've done? So
I love it. I think it's great, and I think it's a good CTA to have, to see if we can try to change some of that perspective when it comes to how we interact and collaborate with other teams as well. Oftentimes it is very quid pro quo in that sense. I'm curious, one last question for you. I know that last time I asked you what you learned over the course of your career, and you gave a very wonderful answer. This time, I'm curious what you're excited for this year. What are you looking forward to?
What am I excited for this year? I feel like last time you asked me this, it totally stumped me and it took me some moments of fumbling over my words to think of something that I wanted to say. And here I am doing it again. What am I excited for this year? I think I'm excited to try and put some of these things into practice more myself. Because here's where I'm going to sound like a hypocrite just for a second, where I'm going to say, well, I because my customers, my members that I care about, that I try to support, we do things differently. And I don't think I have these opportunities, right? They have to come to our events to engage, and they're really busy, and I don't have opportunities like telling them about pockets or Spotify playlists that are relevant to our business. But I think I would like to get creative about making sure our resources are better framed into their point of view. I've had this idea for a while of, it's the premise of like a Chrome extension. Not that it would have to be specifically implemented that way, but what if our resources were just always that one click away and could sort of real time understand what my customers are doing and sense and respond in their environment instead of them having to come to my environment. So I'm going to look for more opportunities to make sure that my content, my products and services are more available in my customers' environments as opposed to them having to come to us for it. So more poking and exploring around to do for that.
I love it. I think it's always the ones where they are like, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna give you this advice, but I don't do this advice." You gotta make sure. So I
Yeah,
think it's
let
good
me
to
be
be
real.
more
I don't think I'm a pro at doing this, right? I hope that's come through. I'm inspired and I'm looking for opportunities and ideas, and then I also have to, put in the effort to make this a reality for my customers. And I'm, props to the folks who have delivered these content experiences that I get to be inspired by when I encounter them in the world. And so thanks to these folks out there doing this work, and I'm on my way to doing it too.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your inspirational journey as we look through some of the different experiences we can create. I think those are some really great tactics to be able to pull as well. Like not just from the support perspective, like from an organizational perspective, being able to help customers have a more full experience across the board is something that we can help to drive regardless of what organizational function that we're in. And any perspective has a influence on it and can better support it. So thank you so much for, I think, giving it an inspirational and exciting conversation.
We'll see. And can we ask the audience wherever they encounter this episode to please share their examples and tag me and tag you? Because I just want more and more examples of this. So
Yeah, sure.
That's my request of anyone tuning in. If you have examples, whether they're your own products and services or things you see out in the world, how cool would it be to almost have the sort of an example library of content examples that do this, that we can all be inspired by?
I will definitely make sure that happens. And if they do want to follow up with you directly, is there some place that's the best to connect with you?
The easiest, most universal way is I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So Sara Feldman on LinkedIn. There are a few, so find the one that works for the Consortium for Service Innovation. And I'm active in a few Slack communities, CX accelerators, and support driven. So start with me on LinkedIn, and maybe we'll also cross paths in some Slack communities.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining me, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the great convo as always, Neil.